Okay, so I've been watching this show since 2010 and I've wanted to make a video on it for 3 years now, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a thing about Sherlock BBC and Queerbaiting, bad microphone be damned. I'm sure the fact that I've only reviewed Disney sequels on this channel before now will inspire a great deal of confidence in my viewers. I was initially drawn to Sherlock BBC because it had great characters, funny writing, beautiful cinematography, and because Sherlock seemed a little not straight. Currently, regular LGBTQ+ characters make up about 4% of television, and there are probably people out there who would say I should be content with that statistic. Not everyone's gonna care about representation. If you're fine with the state of media right now, I don't think I'm gonna change your mind with this video. Personally, I like to see queer characters in media. Television affects how we see the world. We've established the heterosexual white person as the default protagonist on television. For me, when I see a person of color as a main character, or a queer person as a main character, I see the normalization of non-white queer people as leaders in our society. Sherlock BBC is guilty of falling back on the white crutch, but when I first watched the series, I saw potential sexuality-wise. Was Sherlock Holmes queer? I was, of course, wrong to get my hopes up. This show will never make Sherlock canonically queer. Ever. But for years, I let myself believe. Why? What is queerbaiting? Queerbaiting. When people in media, usually television or movies, question a character's sexuality or add homoerotic tension between two characters to attract more liberal and queer viewers, all while having no intention of outing said characters as queer. The key word here is intention. I feel like the writers have to be all but outright about a character's sexuality, but deliberately withhold any proof of their queerness for a show to be considered queerbaiting trash. It's like the difference between manslaughter and premeditated murder. Natalie, slow down. You can't compare queerbaiting to literal murder! Well, yeah, you're right. Let's be upfront here. Queerbaiting isn't the literal worst thing to ever exist. It's not gonna stuff a newborn kitten into a meat grinder or start World War III. When John and Sherlock aren't queer this season, we shouldn't start a riot. Queerbaiting annoys me. As a person who cares deeply about representation on television, as someone who believes that change can be won through the transformation of media, I do not like to be teased with the notion of a gay detective show. I'd like to see more main characters who happen to be queer. It'd make me happy, both as a queer person, an advocate, and a storyteller. Sue me. But wait, you cry! You want main characters who just happen to be queer. If the writers outed Sherlock, he wouldn't happen to be queer. It would be fan service. It would be a statement. There wouldn't be anything happen to be about it. And you know what? I might have agreed with you, or at least seen your point, if sexuality hadn't already been a major theme in Sherlock BBC. These characters talk about sexuality so often that the writers have to bend over backwards to keep Sherlock's sexuality a mystery.
I wish you weren't whatever it is you are.
Well,
Just once would have been nice.
I was waiting until we got married.
If a character's sexuality never comes up in a story, it makes sense for their sexuality to remain ambiguous. Sherlock BBC drives me nuts because it broaches the topic of sexuality on a regular basis but continues to dance around Sherlock and John's sexual preferences almost out of spite.
Damn it, Holmes, you are flesh and blood, you have feelings, you must have impulses.
And here we are, the matter of John Watson. I've avoided him up till now because I didn't want to muddle my message. Do I want Sherlock and John to get together? I don't know. Did people want Scully and Mulder to get together? It's what happens when you're a good writer and you send two characters on dangerous adventures together. They develop chemistry. It doesn't matter to me whether or not Sherlock and John get together from a representational perspective. I look at this series and both Sherlock and John seem not straight to me. Why? I'll get to that. But the point is, for years my hope was that Sherlock and John would be confirmed as canonically queer. Representation does not necessarily equal two characters getting together. At last. The point where I go through the show a little and point out what feels queer to me. Buckle up, buckaroos. It's gonna be a bumpy ride! Oh, the restaurant scene. We all recognize this setup, I think. Character A and character B go to a restaurant or a party or whatever. People assume they're a couple on a date. The audience laughs because, little do these bystanders know that character A and character B are actually not together. It's funny! In the scene, Sherlock and John go to an Italian restaurant. The owner assumes Sherlock and John are together, which John ardently denies.
I'm not his date.
At this point, I'm like, alright, I've got a grasp on this scene. John doesn't want a relationship with Sherlock. He's not queer. He and Sherlock are two blokes who happen to go out to eat, and they should be allowed to hang out together as friends without me making everything gay.
You don't have a girlfriend then? Girlfriend? No, not really my area.
All right. Do you have a boyfriend? Which is fine, by the way.
I know it's fine.
So you've got a boyfriend?
No.
Right, okay. You're unattached, like me.
Okay, so this is how you make small talk with your new flatmates, yes? While Sherlock appears completely oblivious of Molly when she tries to flirt with him, Sherlock must read John's words here as flirtation, or he wouldn't have felt the need to dissuade John with his married to my work comment.
John, I think you should know that I consider myself married to my work, and while I'm flattered by your interest, I'm really not looking for anything.
No.
Note also that while Sherlock says women aren't his area, he doesn't say the same for men, only that he is
Married to my work.
I pick on the restaurant scene a lot, but the whole everyone thinks they're together but they're not act is actually a running gag throughout the series. At first I found it funny. I liked how affronted John got when people assumed he was with Sherlock.
There's another bedroom upstairs if you've been needing 2 bedrooms.
Of course we'll be needing 2. Yesterday.
And since yesterday you've moved in with him and now you're solving crimes together. Might we expect a happy announcement by the end of the week?
Somebody loves you. Well, if I had to punch that face, I'd avoid your nose and teeth too.
You're a great boyfriend.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I always thought I was great.
Now, Sherlock Holmes is a very lucky man.
It's a woman.
A woman?
Yes, of course it's a woman.
You really have moved on, haven't you?
Mrs. Hudson, how many times Sherlock was not my boyfriend?
Live and let live. That's my motto.
Listen to me.
I am not gay.
Then I felt bad for John because no one deserves to be mislabeled over and over and over again. And then I realized that the crowds of people who mistook Sherlock and John for lovers were probably meant to represent the audience. We're the ones who look at these two men who are best friends and call them lovers. Or at least I am. I am Miss Hudson. I am Angelo. Except I'm not Miss Hudson, and I'm not Angelo, or any of the other people who assume Sherlock and John are together, because I am an omnipresent observer outside Sherlock's world. I have access to the tiniest details of Sherlock and John's lives. I am also, as aforementioned, someone who cares deeply about queer representation on television, and someone who loves to overanalyze shit. I associate Sherlock with queerness like I associate Moriarty with bird symbolism. If I'm a moron to assume that Sherlock and John are queer, then I'd like to believe that's a problem with my analysis, not my morality. Moving on, the blind banker. John goes on a date. Sherlock tags along. Well, okay then.
I need to get some air. We're going out tonight.
Actually, I've got a date.
What?
To where 2 people who like each other go out and have fun.
That's what I was suggesting.
No, it wasn't.
A study in Belgravia. Oh, where to begin? The Hound of the Baskervilles explores Sherlock and fear. The Reichenbach Fall, Sherlock and death. A Study in Belgravia explores Sherlock and sex. I say Sherlock and sex rather than Sherlock and love because I don't see Irene Adler as a character so much as a sex symbol. She's a dominatrix who exists to get Sherlock all hot and bothered. Do I think Sherlock developed feelings for Irene Adler? Absolutely. Sherlock may or may not have written her a song, he kept her phone for sentimental purposes, he ran to her rescue when she was kidnapped by these people. But Sherlock's attraction to Irene Adler does not make him straight. It also doesn't diminish the chemistry between him and John, which Irene actually acknowledges. This is what I mean when I say that this show's no stranger to sexual themes.
You jealous?
We're not a couple.
Yes, you are. There. I'm not dead. Let's have dinner.
Who the hell knows about Sherlock Holmes? But for the record, if anyone out there still cares, I'm not actually gay.
Well, I am. Look at us both.
Irene's a symbol for desire. Her presence kicks off conversations about love and sex. In his attempts to assert his straightness, John talks about his sexual orientation ad nauseum. When confronted with Sherlock's apparent lack of desire, characters like John and Janine ask about his love life. Sexuality matters in this show.
Listen, has he ever had any kind of girlfriend, boyfriend, a relationship ever?
I don't know.
How can we not know?
He's Sherlock. How will we ever know what goes on in that funny old head?
While on the topic of Irene Adler, though, I've gotta address Irene's queerness. I would celebrate, but then she's a side character who only makes a naked cameo outside this one episode. She exists to develop Sherlock's character. She's not so much an actual character as a straight guy's wet dream. Fun fact, Mr. Totally Straight John keeps track of all the messages Sherlock gets from Irene. Because don't we all count the number of text messages our friends get from their maybe crushes?
57?
Sorry, what?
57 of those texts, the ones I've heard.
Thrilling that you've been counting.
I guess the ringtone's pretty suggestive, so we'd probably keep track of that.
No, that wasn't. I didn't.
It was me.
My God, really?
What?
My phone.
Have I mentioned this show's relationship with fire? In the Great Game, Moriarty promises to burn the heart out of Sherlock. Later, Sherlock establishes fire as an easy way to determine a person's priority.
On hearing a smoke alarm, a mother would look towards her child. Amazing how fire exposes our priorities.
Then in The Empty Hearse, our villain stuffs John in a bonfire.
Who did that? And why did they target me?
Two reasons, John. One, because Moriarty said he'd burn the heart out of Sherlock, and you are his heart. And two, because Magnuson wanted to make sure you were Sherlock's top priority.
Very hard to find a pressure point on you, Mr. Holmes. Drugs thing I never believed for a moment. Anyway, you wouldn't care if it was exposed, would you? Well, look how you care about John Watson.
Onward! Get a load of this scene.
The stuff that you wanted to say, but didn't say it.
Yeah.
Say it now.
So, there was something John could never bring himself to say to Sherlock. It's possible that John does eventually say this something to Sherlock's headstone.
You were the best man, the most human being that I've ever known, and no one will ever convince me that you told me a lie.
I might have let the matter drop, but then the next season, Sherlock says,
John, there's something I should say. I've meant to say always and I never have. Since it's unlikely we'll ever meet again, I might as well say it now. Sherlock is actually a girl's name.
By the time of his last vow, Sherlock has already stated how much he cares about John as his best friend. That was what the best man speech was for. So what's left but a romantic confession? Yes, of course, it was just a joke. It's funny because they're not gay. How stupid would a person have to be to fall for that setup? It's not like Sherlock literally restarted his heart for John Watson a couple minutes ago. Oh, wait.
Oh, Sherlock, if you take one more step, I swear I will kill you.
No, Mrs. Watson. You won't.
Mary shoots Sherlock in the chest. Sherlock retreats into his mind palace, and around the time his heart stops, Sherlock is trapped in a metaphorical dungeon with Moriarty, who teases Sherlock about his death. It's at this point that Moriarty lists the people Sherlock cares about, and he mentions Miss Hudson and Irene, but the name that gets Sherlock to open his eyes is of course John's.
You're letting him down, Sherlock. John Watson is definitely in danger.
And then, Sherlock starts his heart by climbing up a mental reconstruction of the stairwell from A Study in Pink. This is the stairwell from Sherlock and John's first case, their first crime scene. Sherlock restarts his own heart with their first night together. What am I supposed to say? There are plenty of other little queer things sprinkled throughout the show, but I only wanted to highlight the parts that stuck out to me. If you've made it to this point in the video and you're still convinced that this show's entirely straight and that the writers didn't deliberately leave a breadcrumb trail of queerness for their fans to follow, then kudos to you. You've saved yourself a whole lot of confusion. The show switches between queer and not queer so fast, I feel like I gave myself a concussion. Conclusion. I read Sherlock is queer, so you should make him canonically queer. I'm aware that media doesn't work like that. The writers of Sherlock BBC get to decide what to do with Sherlock Holmes, not the fans. If I'm so aggravated by the show, then I should leave the fandom, right? Well, yes. In the time since Sherlock BBC came out, I've found some great new shows with queer characters, ones that I'll list a little later. I don't have to rely on Sherlock BBC to be my queer representation savior anymore. So, what do I want? Why did I make this video when there are other shows out there that don't bait their queer audiences? I guess I want people to understand why I'm annoyed. I've talked to plenty of people who don't see any chemistry between Sherlock and John at all, and I wanted to show them what I see as a queer critic. I'm sure the YouTube comment section will be a civil place as per usual. For now, I'd like to plug a couple shows. If you want some queer representation, you guys should check out Welcome to Night Vale, a podcast about a radio host who falls in love with a scientist. This podcast sounds like NPR for the Twilight Zone, and let me tell you, you will love the show's characters.
Dana has been furiously translating these symbols, and her best guess is that they say, they come in twos. You come in twos. You and you. Kill your double. There's also a link to this amazing cat that keeps jumping in and out of boxes, and oh my god, that is the cutest thing I have ever seen! Dana, you have got to post that on my wall.
I'd also recommend Steven Universe, a show that follows Steven and his guardians, the Crystal Gems, a team of space rocks who look a lot like humans. The Crystal Gems all go by female pronouns, and 2 of them are in a relationship, though I won't spoil anything.
Oh, yeah! Yeah, Pete! What are you doing? The light was red! I know. There she is! What's your plan? New Pearl, no plan.
Then there's In the Flesh, a show that teeters on the edge of the tortured queer genre, but what the hell, we can't all be perfect. In the Flesh details the aftermath of a zombie apocalypse. It's sad, yeah, but also super smart.
Your parents, they're looking forward to seeing you again? Why wouldn't they?
Because I'm a zombie and I killed people.
No. Kieran, what are you? Look at me. You are...
I am a partially deceased syndrome sufferer.
And?
And what I did in my untreated state was not my fault.
If you guys have any other favorite queer shows, don't be afraid to leave a comment down below. I'm off to catch up on some sleep.
No matter where I go, 'cause you'll be detective and I will be the show.